Welcome to the deep dive.
Thinking back to April 2025, that big blackout in Spain and Portugal.
Right, yeah. A lot of people probably remember that.
Suddenly, transport's down, hospitals on backup power. Even paying for things got tricky.
It really brought home how much we rely on that constant electricity flow.
And it wasn't just a local issue, was it?
No, not at all. That Iberian incident was, well, a pretty stark example of how interconnected the European power grid actually is.
We're talking ENTA, the network covering 36 countries.
Exactly, 36 countries. So a problem in one spot can very quickly ripple outwards.
Which leads to the big question, I suppose. How does a system that vast, that seemingly sophisticated, just go dark?
Yeah.
So today in this deep dive, we're getting into why blackouts happen, the state of our, frankly, aging grid infrastructure.
That's a big one.
Why it needs modernizing, and specifically how new things like solar energy fit in or sometimes complicate things.
It's a complex picture.
You might be wondering, how can it fail? Let's unpack it.
Okay, so at its absolute core, it's about maintaining a really delicate balance.
Supply and demand.
Exactly. The electricity being generated has to match almost perfectly what's being consumed moment by moment.
Like keeping water pressure constant in a huge network. That kind of analogy.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. Any big imbalance spells trouble.
And the triggers aren't always obvious, are they? Our sources mentioned quite a range.
Oh, absolutely. You've got external stuff. Severe weather is huge. High winds, lightning, ice, even heat waves can strain things.
Falling trees, too, apparently.
Surprisingly common, yes. That's a major weather-related one. Then there are internal things, like old equipment just failing, transformers, cables.
Stuff wearing out.
Right, or simply demand outstripping supply. And then, human error, vandalism, even cyber attacks are possibilities, though they weren't really suspected in the Iberian case.
Right, they ruled that out pretty quickly. So it's rarely just one single fault that causes a massive blackout.
Very rarely. There's this principle called the N1 criterion.
Ah, yes, I read about that. What's the gist?
Basically, the grid is supposed to be designed so that if any single major component fails, a big power line, a transformer, the system can handle it without collapsing.
Okay. So big blackout means more than one thing went wrong, or one thing triggered others.
Usually the latter. It triggers a sequence, a domino effect.
Right, the cascading failure. How does that work? One component trips.
And the power it was carrying has to instantly find another path.
Which can overload those other paths.
Precisely. That can cause frequency deviations. Europe runs at exactly 50 hertz, remember? Imbalances mess with that.
Okay.
Then, protective systems relays, circuit breakers start kicking in automatically to prevent damage to equipment from the overload.
Which sounds good.
But paradoxically, shutting down more lines can actually worsen the imbalance, isolate parts of the grid, and make the blackout spread. You can lose synchronization between regions.
Wow. So the interconnection helps share power, but also helps share problems.
That's the paradox of interconnection, exactly. Benefit and risk, hand in hand.
Which brings us back to Spain and Portugal in April 25. What are the key lessons there?
Well, it was a textbook example of that cascading failure across borders. Started in Spain, boom, Portugal was hit hard because they're tightly linked.
We saw data showing a massive sudden drop in Spain's electricity load.
And getting things back online was gradual. They relied on hydropower and, crucially, those interconnections with France and Morocco to help stabilize and restart.
And the cause. There was some confusion initially.
Yeah.
Atmospheric vibration.
Yeah, that was floated early on. The official lines settled on a very strong oscillation in the Spanish system that led to protective disconnections. Portugal basically said they saw voltage dips coming from Spain that triggered their own safety systems.
But not a cyber attack. And not an issue of too much renewable energy at that moment.
Correct. Both were ruled out. It really showed how protection systems work to prevent an even wider collapse, but also highlighted the cross-border vulnerability. Rare event, but massive impact.
Underscores the need for resilience, definitely. But the grid faces pressure even without these big events, right? The age issue keeps coming up.
It's a huge underlying factor. Across the EU, the average age of grid assets is around 40 years. And the distribution networks, the local lines, often older.
How long is this stuff meant to last?
Well, big transmission lines might last 50 years or more, but the towers, the substations, transformers, maybe 25 to 50 years. And climate change is adding new stresses, like heat affecting transformer cooling.
So older gear means more chance of failure, more energy lost, just transmitting it, less capacity.
All of the above, plus higher maintenance costs. And this is all happening while we're trying to overhaul the system for the energy transition.
Right. Which brings us to solar power. Vital for clean energy, but it adds its own challenges to this old grid.
Oh, absolutely. Solar PV is booming. Big solar farms, tons of rooftop panels. It's shifting generation from big central plants to being much more distributed.
But it's variable, intermittent.
Exactly. Sunshine comes and goes, clouds roll in. That makes balancing supply and demand much more dynamic, much trickier. It affects grid frequency, voltage stability.
I heard about over-voltage issues from too much rooftop solar feeding back in.
That can happen, yeah. Local grids weren't always designed for power flowing backwards from homes, and solar doesn't provide the same inertia, that sort of stabilizing effect that traditional spinning generators do.
Inertia, right. Left physical momentum in the system.
And sometimes, when there's tons of sun but low demand, grid operators might have to curtail solar output, basically waste clean energy, because the grid just can't take it all.
So solar isn't just plug and play. It fundamentally forces us to rethink and rebuild the grid.
It's a major driver for modernization, yes. We need stronger lines, more flexibility, think batteries, maybe hydrogen storage down the line, smarter ways to manage demand.
Making demand follow supply sometimes, not just the other way around.
Exactly, demand response. And we need way more digitalization, advanced controls, better forecasting. Solar is really the catalyst pushing many of these necessary upgrades forward.
Okay, so it's good that the EU seems to be on this with things like the Green Deal, Repower EU, the Grid Action Plan.
Definitely. There's recognition at the policy level. The focus of energy security is shifting, less about just fossil fuel sources, more about managing this clean transition and having a robust, flexible domestic system.
So what are the key solutions then to integrate renewables and avoid more blackouts?
It's a mix. More grid flexibility from storage and demand side, definitely stronger interconnections between countries, better market designs that reward flexibility.
In planning.
Crucial. Better long-term planning like an SOE does with its network development plans, smarter operational tools like SCADA systems, robust emergency plans, black start capabilities to restart the grid from scratch.
And physical and cybersecurity, obviously.
It's underpinning everything.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway message for us?
I'd say the European power grid is really at a pivotal moment. The Iberian blackout was a sharp reminder of the complexities involved. We need massive transformation, huge investment to build a grid that's fit for a secure, sustainable future.
The path forward exists, but it needs serious commitment.
Absolutely. Careful planning, sustained effort. And it makes you wonder what other unexpected challenges might pop up as we push forward with this huge energy transition.